Hello and welcome to the GameDev Outpost. In this video, we'll be talking about visual shaders and transparency in Godot 3. Transparency is also known as opacity, and in the case of visual shaders, it's known as alpha. We can use this for so many things, like grass and trees, or glass, or even water. So if we want to adjust our alpha, we can plug in a texture, we can plug in a scalar uniform, a scalar constant, we can even plug in a color if we wanted to. But it really only reads 0 to 1 data. So if I make a scalar constant, plug this in, we'll preview this. 0 or black means it's fully transparent, you can't see it. And 1, white, means that it's fully transparent and you can see it. Now with the alpha, everything in between 0 and 1 is also valid. So it's at full gradient scale. Now I have a texture that I want to use as an example. So I'll pull this in and I'll make a vector decompose so that we can preview each one of these channels. So in the Y, I have a gradient that goes from top to bottom. You can see as it gets closer to the black, it starts to fade. In the Z, I have a gradient that goes from left to right. It's pretty much the same thing. And then in X, I have text that has a hard outline around it. There's no fall off. And in the alpha, I also have text, but this does have a fall off. It has a gradient. If I wanted to invert all of these, so I could see them a little bit different, I could use what's called a 1 minus. I can plug everything into here, and I'll flip it around. And you can see that it looks like this has a glow at the edge here. Now with the alpha, we also have something called alpha scissor. And what this does is it looks for 0 and 1 as well, but as soon as you plug something into it, it won't look for anything that's between 0 and 1. So we can make a scalar constant, and we'll plug this in. Now when you put the scalar constant in here, this actually acts as a threshold. The closer we get to 1, the tighter it's going to be. The closer we get to 0, the more it's going to allow. Usually you want to leave this at 1. Now when using alpha scissor, this can be a little more efficient than just using alpha because it's just looking for 0 and 1 and nothing in between. It's more efficient. Now let's talk about shadows with transparency. So right now you can see that there's a shadow being cast onto these planes. It's rendering. If you want to turn that off, you want to go to flags and you want to click on shadows disabled. And this will turn shadows off if you need to be a little more efficient. Now very similar, say that we wanted to be able to cast shadows from a transparent object. You'll see that right now, no shadows are being cast. So in your visual shader, if you go to modes, you want to look at depth draw. Instead of opaque, we want to switch this to alpha prepass. You can see that shadows are now being rendered. Now there's another thing to look at here. You can see that everything is transparent and being rendered on one side. But if we look at the other side, you'll see that nothing shows up. One way that you could solve this is by doubling up your geometry when you export and having one plane's normals face one way and having another plane's normal face the other way. The other way that we do that, and for just about the same cost, you want to go to call in your modes, and instead of having back turned on or front will show the other side, you want to turn on disabled. And now it'll render on both sides. So now you have a two-sided material. Now with all that said, the final thing I want to say here is you want to be careful with transparent objects. At different stages in the rendering pipeline, as you layer transparent objects, it will become more and more expensive, especially if you're casting shadows onto them, and especially if they can cast shadows. Ideally, if you had something like a character and it had a cape on, and the cape was the only thing that was transparent, you want to use at least 2 materials for this. One that isn't transparent at all, and one that is transparent for just the cape. You want to minimize the amount of transparency that you're using. Alright guys, this should cover visual shaders and transparency in Godot 3. If you thought this video was useful and it helped, please let me know by commenting down below and liking the video. Thanks guys.